Welcome to the Armchair Fantasy Football Podcast. Here are your hosts, DJ Marcotte and John Soroyce. Enjoy the show.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Armchair Fantasy Football Podcast, the one and only working class podcast. We are the Blue Collar Ballers. I'm here with John Soroyce and myself, DJ Marcotte. You can check us out on our Facebook page at Armchair Fantasy Football, on Twitter at ArmchairFFPod, on Instagram at Armchair_Fantasy_Football. I am on Twitter at Armchair Kingpin. John is on Twitter at John2977. And you can email us at armchairfb@gmail.com. And you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Podbean, YouTube, the whole 9 yards. Just search Armchair Fantasy Football. Unfortunately, no video for at least a week or two. Maybe some video next week. We'll see. Maybe some Instagram Live next week. Might test that out. We've had some success with Facebook Live, John. So it only makes sense to do some Instagram Live. So, there's a lockdown throughout the country pretty much, right?
Yes.
That's what I'm hearing. And it's a there's stay-at-home orders and all that stuff. But when I drive to work as an essential worker here in the good old US of A, I see an awful lot of cars on the road. Are you noticing the same thing as me?
They're all essential workers.
I don't know if they are. And there's like carloads of like 2 to 4 people. I feel like that's not what we're looking for with this stay-at-home order. Am I crazy? I mean, I feel like there's just as much traffic as there ever has been.
No, I don't, depending where you are, I thought traffic is a lot lighter than usual, but you're also in the greater Portland area, so you see a little more traffic than I do.
Yeah, and it's funny, John and I literally live where John's the next town over. And, sometimes we'll ride to the studio together, and, I'll drop him off. And right before we did this, I guess our little simulcast here, well, I guess that's the wrong word, but remote podcast, we drove, I dropped you off on the last one, I can't remember. And literally, see, my town doesn't have the best reputation. I do live on the outskirts of it, near the beach, so I'm in a pretty nice area. But it doesn't have the best reputation, the town I live in. Johnstown is pretty cool, has a pretty good reputation overall. So when I drive from Saco, which is where John lives, I won't give him your exact address, John. It was like a ghost town over there. And then I get into Biddeford, where I live, and it's like rush hour in Manhattan. I'm trying to wrap my head around this. So for those of you numbskulls that live in Biddeford, Maine, there is a stay-at-home order. So stay the hell home. I guess you're safe.
I'm
over there in Saco, where everybody is following the order.
Yeah, the only people I see driving around are the cops mostly. I've seen the cops more. I see them at least 3 or 4 times a day. Yeah.
So anyway, it's curious to see how. And I was actually driving home today, and apparently there's we live in Maine. It's a very touristy area, where they actually call it vacation land. And there was a big billboard, not a billboard, but a LED sign on the way home on the interstate today that said, if you come into Maine and you are not essential, then you have to quarantine for 14 days. So one would think that would wipe out pretty much everybody's vacation. They have to quarantine for 14 days. So I don't think we're vacation land anymore. What do you think?
No. I saw the exact same sign you saw. And
yeah, it's more like get the F out land at this point.
Well, that and who's monitoring who's getting quarantined when they come in the state? There's no,
Well, I wondered that, too. Is there a cop at, every, I don't know, man. What a world we live in,
Yeah.
John. But that's why we have the Armchair Fantasy Football Podcast, so we can escape reality and talk fantasy, right, John?
Correct.
So let's talk some fantasy. We will be getting into Bus today, our second Bus episode. Our last one was in January, February-ish. We've learned a lot since then, so we'll be talking Bus today. But prior to that, I feel like we should probably talk some news.
Okay, so we'll start off with some news. Coach Zach Taylor of the Cincinnati Bengals says A.J. Green is fully healthy.
That's fantastic until he's not. I mean, but it seems like he'll have enough motivation to actually play this year. Especially with Andy Dalton hurt, that dude had no reason to get out there and risk his career in a contract year, frankly. So I think this year he might have some more incentive with Joe Burrow likely at quarterback. I mean, we talked about the offense. It might as well be an all-star offense. Ohio is the land of good offenses on paper, John. You look at Cleveland and you look at Cincy. They got some great offenses on paper. We'll see if that parlays to reality in 2020. I'm not so sure.
Well, hopefully they can play like Ohio State instead of the opposite.
Yeah, A.J. Green will help. That's for sure.
Yep. Other news for Cincinnati Bengals. All options are on the table for the Bengals and Andy Dalton. So I think they're trying to keep him happy. But at the same time, I know one of the options is trading him. But potential suitor is the question, especially with his contract, his numbers. So it's a good possibility Dalton is still under contract. He could be playing as a backup for whoever the QB is there.
Well, I think Josh Rosen, and I could be wrong about this. I'm just going off the top of my head. I think he got a second-round pick for Arizona last year. I could be wrong. You would think that Dalton would garner right around that in terms of value. So I guess, you look at a team like New England who has mentioned, Andy Dalton, or at least, he's been connected with them in some way, shape, or fashion. And Bill Belichick has said some pretty positive things about Dalton in the past. I still look at New England as a possible landing spot, but it's got to be, to me, New England or the Chargers that are looking for, an upgrade or at least a stopgap. But I don't know. We'll see, because I firmly believe New England is going to draft a quarterback, and then they have two other ones on their roster too. So I know they got rid of who was it? Case Keenum. I don't know, some Case Keenum wannabe. What's the guy's name
for the Pats? Cody Kessler.
Yeah, Cody Kessler. So that freed up something. That freed up a spot for something. But a lot of teams, John, don't carry three quarterbacks either. So I'm curious to see. I just really feel like New England is going to end up with Andy Dalton. But what better backup could you have in Cincinnati than Dalton? You know what I mean? And behind Joe Burrow. I don't think Dalton wants that, though. I think he'd prefer to be traded.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with you there. But at the same time, I think Patriots may not do the Dalton route unless they don't get what they want in the draft, which projections right now, a lot of people got Jordan Love going there, so that could change the whole scenario as well.
Well, yeah, and maybe he goes. I haven't really seen where he's going in mocks. I mean, obviously, I mocked him to New England on the earlier this week's episode. We'll see. I really don't think, though. I firmly believe that New England is not rolling in to the 2020 NFL season with the current quarterback roster that they have. I just don't think that's going to happen unless they're tanking.
Never know. So on the LA Chargers news, the LA Chargers are still very high on running back Justin Jackson.
I don't buy it. Justin Jackson can't stay healthy. He's not a big back. He's about the same size as Austin Eckler. Did you know that, John? And they're pretty much the same size.
No, did not know that. I thought he was slightly bigger.
He's a little bit bigger, but the difference isn't that big. Austin Eckler's obviously a superior pass catching back. The kid's got some skills, but I just don't see him as. I mean, he might be a viable option as an RB3 in fantasy, but he can't stay healthy. And I think if they think they're going to get Melvin Gordon out of Justin Jackson, then they're sorely mistaken. So I don't know. To me, if they roll into the season with Eckler and Jackson, John, I don't know about you, but I would only look at Eckler as the fantasy relevant guy. I don't think I could ever consider Jackson because he's had the opportunities and he's flashed a little bit, but he's never proven to be more than a backup to the backup.
True.
I don't know. What do you think about him?
Justin Jackson's always been he only got more opportunity last year with, Gordon, reported late and everything, but he's never been the bell cow like how people expect him to be. It's always been a split committee even without Melvin Gordon there. Eckler has the more upside, I think, because he's more used in the passing game. They could do a 1-2 punch here. I mean, my honest opinion, unless I see something they add in the draft, I think it will be like a 65-35 split here. I know a lot of people do not consider Eckler a 3-down back, but I think he will be used differently if they use him 65% of the time.
I'll tell you something right now. If they roll into the season with Justin Jackson and Austin Eckler, get as many shares of Austin Eckler as you can.
Agree. Okay, incoming rookie Brandon Ayuk had core muscle surgery on Tuesday, and I just butchered his name.
You're seeing me laugh, but I think it's Ayuk, but whatever. Tomato. So what about him?
He had
threw me off.
He had core muscle surgery on Tuesday.
Well, that's not going to help, but Odell Beckham had core muscle surgery as well, and I anticipate he'll be ready for the season, but definitely not good for his draft stock. I would have almost faked it and announced the surgery afterwards, but he already had it, so the cat's out of the bag. Probably a third-round guy at best, I think, now.
I think
he might even go later than that.
I think he slipped from the second to the third, with possibly being an early fourth.
Right, yeah, at this point.
Well, especially with no medical news being, nobody to clear him, nobody to check up on him with all the, the corona thing going. They can't follow up.
I didn't even know this was a possibility,
So, wait and see, but
that guy.
It does hurt his draft status, so.
Yeah.
DeAndre Hopkins, David Johnson news here. The trade is still not official. DeAndre Hopkins has still not passed his physical.
DeAndre Hopkins will pass his physical if they have to get Dr. Nick Riviera from The Simpsons to clear him. Hey, everybody, they're gonna pass him.
Yes,
Don't worry
I agree,
about it.
but we
This
still
is
gotta
gonna go
report it.
through.
It's news.
Yeah.
So, other news. Todd Gurley still hasn't passed his physical. Another one, but this trade is a.
But have these guys had their physical? I mean, that's kind of fake news if they haven't had their physical.
This is saying it is still, according to the news, it's saying still hasn't passed his physical.
So to me, that means he hasn't had it, because if he had it and didn't pass it, that's a fail, I guess. So Todd Gurley's not going anywhere either.
Yeah, I don't think so either. So, last bit of news: Rams want to use more than one running back post Gurley, which means basically.
I'm telling you. Look, John, I almost put Darrell Henderson on my bust list, but then I realized he's not that big of a deal to begin with. If you look at his efficiency or lack thereof last year, John, there is no reason to give this guy a workhorse role, at least not at this point, maybe halfway through the season. But his efficiency last year was not good. Malcolm Brown was more efficient. I mean, if anything, to me, Malcolm Brown's going to get a 50-50 split here, and they may go running back in the draft as well. That's a possibility. But I've never been a big guy on Darrell Henderson. If you remember last year, John, dudes were drafting this guy in the 6th round because they thought he was going to beat Todd Gurley for the starting role. I mean, come on. Let's be realistic here. This guy was pretty good in college, but he hasn't shown anything at the NFL level. And he's going to be lucky if he's not marginalized by the end of next year, let alone a 50-50 timeshare. I'm not on the Henderson train at all. And for those of you that are, good luck.
Okay, so are we ready to start a bust?
I don't know. Where are you at on Henderson? I know you're probably higher than I am. I just buried the guy 6 feet deep.
I mean, honestly, I think Henderson. I think with how much he did in college, and I'm not saying always college translates in the NFL. I think he has a chance. He didn't get enough.
Well, everybody's got a chance.
No, I get that.
Zach Zenner's got a chance,
but he didn't get even near enough touches to even solidify any decent numbers to even look at. But college numbers, you look at.
I would look back at that. I think you'd be surprised at what you find at least early in the season, and he sucked, for lack of a better term.
But their line sucked though too.
It did in training camp. If it happens, we'll see how that shakes out. And if he outperforms Brown in training camp, then great. But it appears that LA doesn't even intend to go in a workhorse back direction. And teams lie. Who knows? But I'm telling you right now, dude, if they had a running back in the draft, that's curtains for
for both of them. It's for both of them, Brown and him.
Yeah. All right, so you good with news?
I am good.
All right, so yeah, we're talking busts today, John. I'm excited about that. I like to talk the sleepers more because it's a little more positive. So today's episode isn't as much on the positive side, but it's still good information to have. So before we get going, John, once again, I want to assure the listeners that we're not just about providing you guys with great content, but new content. So we could sit here and talk about the same names repeatedly, but we want to mix it up as much as possible. So with that being said, just a quick recap to the listeners, John. On the last bust episode we had, John had Jameis Winston, Aaron Jones, Darren Waller, and Keenan Allen, and myself. I offered up Aaron Rodgers, Chris Carson, my favorite bust, and John Brown and Jared Cook. But this is phase 2, John, and we're on to the new crop. So let's get right down to it with your first bust on Bust 2, busting out, Mr. Royce.
Okay, my first bust.
You have the floor.
My first bust. It was actually written last on my thing, but he's actually going to be my first, and that's Jimmy G. And here's why I think Jimmy G, and I'm a Pats fan, but the man is overrated. He really is overrated. Yes, he had 27 touchdowns last year. He had a 5.7% touchdown rate. He had 13 interceptions with a 2.7 interception rate. Numbers sound decent, right?
Not bad.
69.1% completion percentage, 3,978 yards passing. Seems pretty good, right?
Yep.
Okay. So his ADP is around 150. It's not bad for the price you're getting. But now you start breaking down his stats. Jimmy G averaged 15.5 fantasy points per game. Ugh. That ain't good.
That ain't good.
Oh, it gets better. He had 0 games of over 30 fantasy points in PPR. 0.
Wow.
0. None.
Goose egg.
Nada. He only had, out of all the games he played, all 16 games, he only had 4 games of 20-plus fantasy points. 4. That's not good. Oh, it gets worse. He had 9 games of less than 20 fantasy points, and he had 2 games of single-digit fantasy points.
I don't even think you have to say anymore. I'm already out on him.
Oh, no, it gets better. The team run usage last year for the San Fran was 51.39% in the season. 51% of the time they ran the ball. Do you think that changes?
No.
Okay. It spiked, too. The last 3 games counts playoffs and Super Bowl. Their run usage was 64.16 in the last 3 games. Which means this team wants to run the ball. And I think they intend on running the ball. And I'm not saying they're not going to throw, but now you throw in this. San Fran last year ranked 29th in total attempts for a passing as a team. So it's not going to change. They're a run team first, and Jimmy G is going to be a victim and be a bust because of this.
I don't disagree with you. And it's funny, one of my the stat line that you just gave is similar to one of my wide receiver busts here in terms of the quarterback play and the differential between run and pass. And I looked at we'll get to that. I'll get to that first, but I wasn't surprised when I broke that stuff down for the quarterback that is to my wide receiver. A little surprised, with San Fran. I thought they threw a lot more than that. That's why I love Deebo Samuel so much, because he's one of their 4 running backs, basically.
Agreed.
But that's a concern for any receiver not named Deebo Samuel. So it's weird. You say all of that, and it tells me, okay, yeah, Jimmy Garoppolo is likely a bust and overrated, and man, that makes me like Deebo Samuel even more.
There's also a different part of it too. This is my theory. I don't think the 49ers are going to draft a wide receiver like a lot of people got him in mock drafts. I think they're going to go corner. You got an agent Richard Sherman here. You got a team that got torched by the Kavorka in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And their run defense is fine. We know this. But their pass D got exposed in the Super Bowl. Sherman.
Well, and even their run D did too, John. I mean, Damian Williams took him to school a couple of times there, in the second half of that game. But I get your point.
Yeah, and they just traded DeForest Buckner, who is a great D lineman. So I think they're going to go D at that pick. I really do.
And they already have a really good defense, but see, to me, I look at it the opposite way, John. I think their offense failed them just as much as their defense did. But you could argue either side. Like I said, that makes what you just said makes me like Debo even more because they don't pass as much, but he doesn't just catch passes. He's almost a hybrid running back as well. So I don't know, it's funny how I translate that to loving Debo even more. Maybe it's because of my Debo love.
No, I mean, but the other part of it too, I don't think they go receiver because Shanahan, I'm not saying Shanahan sticks to only like one receiver, but he sticks to like a core. And here's a core that we forgot about. So you have McKinnon who's possibly coming back or is back and should be healthy. So he might be used in the past game. Let's say Breida's out of the picture. Let's just say he gets traded, cut, whatever.
There's been talks of that.
Yep,
yeah.
There's still Tevin Coleman left. There's still Raheem Mostert left. Even with Emmanuel Sanders gone, which is 53 targets vacated on this team, you still have Kendrick Bourne.
Kendrick Bourne is a great red zone threat.
Yep. You have Marquise Goodwin.
Yep.
You have Dante Pettis.
Yep.
Yep. You still have Kyle Juszczyk, their fullback, who was used in the passing game a lot till he got hurt. And
it hurt back too, right?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. So
okay, yeah.
He ended up coming back. He only played 12 games, so he missed 4 games.
Jalen Hurd is another guy too.
Jalen Hurd's another. So this team, I don't think they're going to go receiver, and that's why I think. I mean, George Kittle is George Kittle. George Kittle will do George Kittle things. I'm not denying that, and I'm not denying that Jimmy G is going to get like at least 20 touchdowns, 25, but he is not going to go into those elite numbers that everybody keeps comparing to.
Nope, and he's not that. I think he's more of a game manager, and Alex Smith, who did have one great year, in fantasy, but I think he's more of an Alex Smith than he is, an Aaron Rodgers, or Aaron Rodgers in his prime.
This bus could blow up in my face if they draft a Jerry Jeudy or a CeeDee Lamb. If they somehow get him, or a Henry Ruggs, it could blow up in my face. But I'm basing this that they don't draft a wide receiver.
Yeah, we'll see. Well, it'll be interesting to see what their strategy is in the draft, and I think that'll tell quite a tale. So, I mentioned that I kind of broke down a quarterback based on the receiver that I'm about to talk about, and this wide receiver, A.J. Brown, John, I think most people have him on their breakout list, and I have him on my bust list, so people are probably scratching their head on that. But let's break it down. So A.J. Brown, as I mentioned, has been the most touted rookie wide receiver out of the 2019 class after this past season. I love A.J. Brown, John. You know that. You know that I was touting this kid out of college. He is a stud receiver prototype. But in a lot of ways, I feel that Deebo Samuel, Deontay Johnson, and especially Terry McLaurin had more impressive rookie campaigns. Like I said, I love A.J. Brown. He may have been my favorite wide receiver out of the 2019 class before the draft. After, not so much. Anytime you get drafted to a team that has Marcus Mariota and Ryan Tannehill as their play callers, you lose me right there. See any wide receiver drafted by Las Vegas in 2020, by the way, because that'll be the same type of scenario. I know I won't get a ton of pushback regarding Mariota, but I probably will get my fair share as it relates to Ryan Tannehill. Look, I'm really happy for Ryan Tannehill. After toiling in less than mediocrity Miami for his first 6 seasons, let's face it, mediocre Tannehill not only got over the hump in Tennessee, but also got himself a nice contract. Tannehill played in the AFC Championship, for heaven's sake, John. But that's where it ends for me. Playing behind the Titans' number 4 ranked offensive line, Tannehill put together a solid season, kind of. He actually finished as the QB 21, John. And while Tannehill's had some solid outings with 5 games over 20 points out of 10 games started, the other 5 games were just okay, averaging around 17 points per game. Tannehill had 7.7 touchdown percentage in 2019 as well, John. That's the highest of his career. His career average is 4.5. Tannehill's 2019 QB rating was 117.5, crushing his career average of 89.8. Including the 2019 playoffs, Tannehill averaged just 17.2 completions per game on a team that finished second to last in pass attempts and 4th from the bottom in pass percentage and dead last in pass attempts per game. This is a run-heavy team with an okay quarterback. And I'm saying an okay quarterback and being generous because it's an okay quarterback at best. One of my biggest problems with Tannehill directly affects A.J. Brown, and that's his inability to support two wide receivers in fantasy football, even in one game. Let's not forget, folks, that Tennessee employs another incredibly athletic and talented wide receiver by the name of Corey Davis. Literally. Only once in week 4 did Tannehill support both Davis and Brown as double-digit PPR point-scoring receivers. Let's throw Jonnu Smith into the mix and Delaney Walker. That brings the game count to 3, where Tannehill supported more than one double-digit PPR performance. It didn't not once did 3 pass catchers reach that milestone throughout the entire season in one game. None of that bodes well for any Titan wide receiver, including A.J. Brown. While A.J. Brown had a nice 4-game stretch to finish the season, I think that creates a little bit of recency bias, John. The fact that the rest of his season was largely inconsistent, I'm a little nervous. As a matter of fact, half of his games, folks, resulted in single-digit PPR performances. Half of them. In his 3 playoff games, are you ready for this, John? He had just 5 receptions total, and in 2 of those games, he caught just 1 pass. None of those games resulted in a touchdown. Trust me, I really do love A.J. Brown. I want to be clear that this is not an A.J. Brown problem. It's a Ryan Tannehill problem. It's a scheme problem. But a problem is a problem any way you slice it, folks. A.J. Brown is going into the season as a breakout, and I think he's coming out as a bust.
I got to agree with you here, because the other part of it, too, is you have Tannehill with a career season, or career year, I should say.
An outlier career year.
Chances of that happening are like 100 to 1. It doesn't matter who the star is. 90% of the time, it doesn't happen for even the stars. You know what I'm saying? So for him to repeat that would be phenomenal. The other part of it is A.J. Brown, maybe he has he was a rookie last year. So I'm not saying defenses probably didn't take him as seriously, where this year they will, I think, is another part of it. But the other part of it, too, is there's no way Tannehill, like you said, is going to zero in on him. I don't like a person like A.J. Brown on my fantasy team because he's not consistent.
Yeah, and they lost Conklin off that line to Cleveland.
Conklin was a huge loss on that team. A huge loss. It's the blind side, basically.
Yeah.
Tannehill's probably going to get sacked more.
Yeah.
So, which means more picks, bad play from Tannehill, and A.J. Brown suffers, and so does Corey Davis.
Yeah, that's the way it's going to go.
I agree.
All right, who do you got next, John?
So, my next bust is Le'Veon Bell.
Le'Veon bust?
Le'Veon bust. His ADP last year was 7. I don't think it'll be as high with how bad he did. But here's an interesting thing. Le'Veon Bell has not played a full season since 2014.
Ugh.
I'm not even counting the year he missed his contract. He hasn't played.
Sounds like David Johnson.
Yeah, he has not played a full season since 2014. Even the year before that, 2013, he only played 13 games. So he doesn't have a track record of playing every game. So has he been more consistent the last few years? Yes, 2017 he played 15 games. 2019 he played 15 games. But this is where it just gets bad. It's not even so much the games he played. Jets only have a 40.1% run usage. That's not high.
Wow. They're playing from behind all the time.
Correct. So it could go up, but even then, let's say it's middle of the pack. Okay, throw that number out, but I'm just throwing that out there. But this is where it gets bad, and they have done nothing to address this. The New York Jets line ranked 31st in run blocking, second to last, and 30th in pass protection. You can't even run
they're awful.
You can't even run a damn screen with this team. That's how bad it is. They have not made any progress for getting any talent on the offensive line. They have signed a few offensive linemen, but if you look at these guys, they were second string or third string on other teams. So they didn't add anybody in free agency like a Trent Williams, you know what I'm saying? A big name like a Conklin. They just let it go. Now they've lost a star wide receiver. Robbie Anderson went. So the question is, it seems like Le'Veon Bell's usage would go up. Should, right?
It should.
It won't. Because here's the thing. Unless they improve that line, Bell is going to get killed. He's going to get killed this year. But that's my theory.
Let's not forget two, one of the other variables, John, is that Adam Gase does not like Le'Veon Bell.
No, that's another point too.
He's openly stated that he did not want to sign Le'Veon Bell to that contract, and he did that under duress, so to speak. So it's just, it's not a good situation. I mean, Lev Bell, I look at him. I mean, when we talk bust, you got to think of it. I mean, somebody that could bust could be still an RB2, and I think Bell could be a low-end RB2, but you got to be careful where his value is in the draft. I mean, to me, I look at him with RB3 value this year, to be realistic. I don't even think he'll hit the RB2 level, and it's only a matter of time before Gase just starts working somebody else into the mix. Not only that, Bell is a patient runner. A patient runner in a bad offensive line is not a good cocktail. That's a bad cocktail.
Yeah,
So
and not to mention, he had other than 2013, his rookie year, 2019 was his worst year for yards per average. So basically, he averaged 3.2.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see where his TLOS is, time behind the line of scrimmage. I don't have that stat handy, but I'm sure it was upwards of,
with that ranking, I don't have the stat in front of me either, but
he's probably amongst the worst in the league, and a lot of that has to do with the offensive line. And
the only upside here is if they draft, according to mock draft, I drafted an offensive lineman for him. One guy will help, but will not. Even if they improve to 25th, 26th, Le'Veon Bell is just doomed for doom here.
Well, there's another upside for him, and that's his pass catching ability, specifically with the anemic receiving core that they have. So he may get worked into that a little bit more. But I look at him as an RB3.
Okay. So
is that kind of where you're seeing him as well?
RB3, almost a RB4 unless things change.
Okay. So I'm going to move on to my next guy, John, if you're good with that.
Yep.
This guy's ADP is round 4, pick 2. And that is criminal as far as I'm concerned. And this guy's name is James Conner. Under no circumstances should you ever be going after him in the 4th round, especially early 4th round. 2018 was a great year for James Conner. The guy you just mentioned, John, Le'Veon Bell, held out an entire season. That kind of opened the door for Conner to have a breakout season, and he did. Conner ran for 973 yards on 215 attempts, 4.5 yards a carry. Even more impressive was the 55 receptions on 71 targets for 497 receiving yards. Touchdowns, 13 total touchdowns. Points, Conner had only one single-digit PPR game that year in 2018, and that was 9.4 points, so that was almost a double-digit game. He had 6 games over 20 PPR points that year, and of those, 3 were over 30. Conner finished the RB6, having only played 12 games, John, in 2018. He became a star in 2018. And then you fast forward to 2019. Conner finished with a respectable 14.6 points per game in PPR. Not bad. That's about where the honeymoon ends, though. That average was really buoyed by 2 monster games in Week 4, which was 26.5 PPR points, and in Week 6, 30.9 PPR points. But funny thing about it, Week 4 was against Cincinnati's league worst run defense. Week 6, there's 8 run defense. So not the toughest matchups there. And that's kind of just where it starts. So let's talk efficiency, because I ain't done here. Conner just barely averaged 4 yards per carry, which was 60th in the league. 60th. That's what I said, 6-0. And went from 9 yards per reception in 2018 down to 7 in 2019. Conner ranked 61st in the league in first down percentage. He ranked 28th in breakaway percentage. Conner took a significant step back and went from looking like a confident lead back to a solid backup that was out of his league as a workhorse back on a team that ranked 26 in pass attempts a game. So they didn't pass the ball a ton. They ran a lot, John. And he's still disappointed. Fast forward to now, this is a draft rich with running back talent. While Pittsburgh doesn't have a first-round pick, they do still have their second and third-round picks as well as 2 fourth-round picks. They've added 3 offensive linemen in free agency. I definitely believe they will draft a running back in one of those rounds. My gut, for whatever reason, tells me A.J. Dillon, and I can't really quantify that, but I look at A.J. Dillon as a guy they could add in the 4th round. I have nothing to back it up, but it would allow Pittsburgh to pair him with Connor, giving Connor a more James White role than a workhorse role. Or worse, Pittsburgh, who traditionally utilizes one back, drafts a guy like Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who we mocked there on the last show, Cam Akers, Zach Moss, Keyshawn Vaughn, or makes a splash by signing Devonta Freeman. In that case, I could see Connor get phased out entirely. Regardless, Connor with that 4th round ADP is just a bust waiting to happen, John.
He scares me. He was right now, unless he proves otherwise, he was a 1-year wonder.
Yeah.
So I don't know if Duck Hodges and who's the other guy there?
Deputy Duck.
Deputy Duck, and who was the other one now?
Mason Rudolph, the guy that got his head caved.
Yeah, so, I mean, I'm not saying they don't take some blame in this and how bad the offense was, but Connor just ran bad as it is. He was injury prone. I don't want to invest my time or money into somebody that could possibly lose their job.
I'm not touching him. No.
Nope.
When we talked about a bust, like a Le'Veon Bell might get you down to RB3, value. James Conner could be waiver wire fodder. I firmly believe that. And I think he might. It all depends on how they go in the draft.
I hope you're right about Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
The Fresh Prince, y'all.
Yep. So, okay, on to my third and last bust. This one you can call me crazy, and some people have already, but I don't care. And that's Adam Thielen.
I think a lot of people will call you crazy, but I'm willing to hear you out.
So Adam Thielen's ADP last year was 23. It's going to be obviously higher than that this year. But Adam Thielen, so as much as we hated Stephon Diggs, but Adam Thielen had a bad season. He still managed to play 10 games, 48 targets, 30 receptions, 418 yards. It's not really good, is it? It's what? That's like 4.8 targets a game. That's literally 40. It's 41.8 yards a game. He had 6 TDs. That's a good thing. He's still a decent red zone threat. But his career high is 9, so I don't see him achieving more than that. This is where
not if Irv Smith he surges up. That'll be a problem.
This is where it gets interesting. Minnesota's run usage was 48.3 in 2019. That's not the concerning part. In 2018, it was 35.59. The new offensive coordinator has made it known, and we saw it last year, they're going to run the ball more.
Even if Cook's out, they're going to do the same thing.
Exactly. They were the 3rd highest in the league for run usage last year. 3rd highest. I don't see it changing unless Dalvin Cook gets hurt, but even then you still have Alexander Mattison. And he's a great runner. Also, what people did, if you didn't notice, is the time of how much Thielen last year didn't line up in the slot as much. So the new offensive coordinator, Kevin Stefanski, has moved Thielen out to the outside, which will ultimately hurt him, I think.
Yeah, I agree. He's better in the slot.
So now, with Diggs gone, who is the threat to take away? If I'm a team, I'm just going to double team Thielen all day long.
Yeah. Well, and I think you might see that this is a team that could go after, like a Jalen Reagor or somebody along those lines. And I think Irv Smith is going to eat into that too. I mean, the team has said that they want Irv Smith to be more involved, and the guy is super talented. I think people will fight you on the fact that if Adam Thielen is the number 1 target, with a quarterback that does trust him, they're probably going to push back on if he's going to be a bust. But at the same time, people need to consider everything you just said. And not only that, if I'm not mistaken, Adam Thielen's a 30-year-old wide receiver, at least at the beginning of the season he is. So he's not young.
He will turn 30. The other part of it, though, too, is the Minnesota offense ranked 30th in pass attempts, 23rd in pass yards, and 14th in touchdowns.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're looking at Thielen too. If he is a star, if he is the number 1 receiver on the team, he's not talented enough to be. So, that's not going to suit him well either.
I don't think he can burn the double teams. I really don't.
I don't even think he could handle number 1 corner coverage. I mean, people look at Stephon Diggs as an equal to Adam Thielen. That couldn't be further from the truth. Stephon Diggs is three times the football player and receiver that Adam Thielen is. Adam Thielen is a good role player on the right offense. If he went to another team, he wouldn't be near as productive as he is. And I agree with you. The injuries are starting to catch up with him. He's getting older.
But
I don't think at this stage of his career, or any stage probably, that he can represent a team as the number one receiver and be effective.
Like, when I say a bust, I mean bust compared to where his ADP is. I don't see him reaching his peak of 1,373 yards he did in 2018. No way. No way. Not on this team. 1,000, yes, but not for his ADP. He's going to go too high. He'll face more double teams. And the other part of it, now that Dalvin Cook's healthy, they're running that ball a lot more.
Oh, yeah. I mean, look what happened to Jordy Nelson when he turned 30, you know, and with Thielen, I look at him as like if you look at it, John Brown's a more talented player than Adam Thielen, and look how he did as a number one. So a number one receiver situation for him would be critical, I think. If he's lucky, he'll be the number two option there, and then he might provide you with the same productivity. But this team with Kirk Cousins, like you said, John, is not a passing team.
No.
And there may be games where he pops for you, but he's going to be another guy that I think low-end wide receiver too. That's the way I see Adam Thielen, so I completely agree with you.
Okay. Who's your third and final bust?
Well, all my if there are any Patriot fans left, I haven't seen any recently. I've seen an awful lot of swag of other teams around here in New England, but the Patriot gear seems to have disappeared. But if there are any left, if you're out there, you're probably not going to be happy with my final bust. But that's Julian Edelman. ADP is 84 overall. That's round 7, pick 11. Not bad. But we haven't seen much of a sample size as it relates to Edelman without Tom Brady, John. But it does exist, ladies and gentlemen. As you may or may not remember, one of New England's many cheating scandals, Deflategate, one of the many, many times they were caught cheating, occurred in 2015. And due to the fallout of this, Tom Brady served a 4-game suspension in 2016, where Jimmy Garoppolo and Jacoby Brissett filled in respectively. This is that sample size. So here we go. During that 4-game span, Edelman averaged 10.4 PPR points a game. Julian Edelman, Mr. PPR. Not bad, but not great for a guy that's supposed to be primarily a PPR force, especially considering that he was just 5 yards a game away from a single-digit average performance in PPR. 5 yards less a game, and he would have got a single-digit average in PPR. Think about that. Even more concerning is that one of those games was a 2.7-point performance in PPR, John. Did you know that?
2.7?
Did you remember that? Yeah, that's what I'm here for. Even more concerning than that is if you zoom in a little more on that, based on that 4-game sample size over 16 games, take a guess where Edelman would have finished at wide receiver in 2016, John.
Probably like 50th.
Close. He would have finished as the wide receiver 41, nestled right between Jordan Matthews and Cameron Meredith. How's that sound?
And those two don't play in the league anymore.
Where would that finish have landed him in 2019? A little bit better. He would have been the wide receiver 36. So that was 4 years ago. Fast forward today. The 5'10", 198-pound Edelman will be entering his age 34 season with having never started 16 games in his 10-year career and only playing in 16 games just 3 out of those 10 seasons. Sorry. Father Time, John, as a close eye on Jules. Let's just say that. And it's only a matter of time as far as I'm concerned when his next major injury hits, and that might be his last major injury, especially given the reckless style that he employs. So let's talk about who Edelman's quarterback will be in 2020. Well, we don't know who's going to be his quarterback, frankly. Is it Jarrett Stidham in his 18.75 QB rating in an admittedly small sample size, but it's still an 18.75 QB rating that we're looking at? Or is it Brian Hoyer with a career 80.33 rating, a career 3.5 touchdown percentage, and 148 yards per game? I don't think I'm out of line by saying that both are significant downgrades from arguably the greatest quarterback since the turn of the century, maybe of all time. And it's not just a downgrade in quarterback, John. It's the downgrade in chemistry. It's his age. It's the punishment he takes with that Wes Welker style. Wes Welker, coincidentally, was done at 34 years old. It's the team. It's the sample size. Even if it's a small sample size, it's what we have to go by. Without Brady, that drop that we discussed earlier scares me more than anything. I think Brady's out of the picture, and so is Julian Edelman, at least in fantasy football.
Yeah, Edelman will turn 34 in May, so end of May, I should say. So he goes 34 into the season. The other concerning part is who knows if Julian Edelman was a quarterback at Kent State. We may see that this year.
You think he'll be the starting quarterback?
You never.
I'm willing to take him off my bust list if that's the case, but I'm still not convinced.
You never know; it could happen.
If he plays quarterback and I can start him at receiver, I'm willing to bend on that.
But no, Edelman age is catching up with him. Receivers when they start getting those early 30s, mid 30s, the drop off, and I just don't think without Brady he will ever be the same. I'm not saying he stinks now, but his blankie is gone. Brady was his blankie and the opposite of him too. But Brady found a new blankie. His name is Chris Godwin.
And his new blanket is like gold encrusted. It's one of those electric heating blanket. Like it's got all the bells and whistles. And Julian Edelman's like the thing that Linus was carrying around. So there's a little bit of a difference there.
That's a good comparison. I like that.
Was it Linus? Or was it Pigpen? I don't know.
It was Linus. It was Linus.
Yes. So anyway, we had a Linus reference and we had a Dr. Nick Riviera reference. I do what I can here on the Working Class Podcast. So that's it for Bust for today. Hopefully you guys avoid these players or you draft them and we're completely wrong. But I don't think that's going to be the case. I think these are guys that definitely could be looking at a big fall from grace in 2020. I mean, it happens every year. You have players that you think are still in their prime or still in a great situation, and then all of a sudden, a fantasy death, the fantasy Grim Reaper knocks on their door and it's all over. And these guys could very well be looking at a situation like that this year.
Yeah, and then I don't want to pick a bust that's kind of obvious, but we know Larry Fitzgerald he's near the tail end of his career. I don't want to pick someone like that. I'd rather pick someone by looking at the stats. I don't want to give these people we know Lamar Jackson's going to regress, but that doesn't make him a bust. He's just going to regress. But I even looked
at a guy like Nick Chubb, John. That if you look at his numbers down the stretch, they're kind of scary bad. He did not finish well last year. And then, of course, Kareem Hunt being into the mix.
Yeah, he started off hot and heavy games 1 through 7, then 7 through 14, where Hunt starts getting involved. His numbers start going down.
It was a big drop-off, and now you're looking at Austin Hooper in the mix, too. And, yeah, it's a tight end, but, any good player added into the mix of any offense is going to take production from the other players. It's just going to happen, or you have a situation like when we look at sleepers, a guy that might be on my next sleeper list, could be somebody like the tight end out of Baltimore there that went to Atlanta. I don't know.
Hayden Hurst.
He's going to a team. Yeah, he's going to a team where he can have the middle of the field to himself. So it's funny how we look at different situations and determine who's on our sleepers, our busts, and our breakout lists. So we'll have one more episode of each down the line, and we'll have our all breakout team and all bust team coming up soon, where we'll basically have quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 receivers, and a tight end on each team. Our favorites for each position and who we think is going to break out and who we think is going to bust. And some of them are probably going to be from the list that we've already compiled. And it'll be fun. It'll be great.
Well,
a lot of content coming. A lot of original new content coming from the Blue Collar Ballers, Johnny Boy.
And next Monday, or we tape Monday, releases Tuesday.
We tape Monday. Yeah, it'll be out Tuesday.
We should be bringing them. The topic will be how to build a better league.
Yeah, and we love doing that because there's a lot of cool stuff we do in our leagues that you could probably put into your leagues and add some spice to them.
Well,
So we'll
you've
go over
already
stuff
added
like that.
something that we haven't done before, and that's adding a video conference to our league.
Yeah, that's new this year, thanks to our fun friends over there at COVID. So anyway, we'll see you guys next week, next Tuesday, and thanks for listening and keep supporting the show, please and thanks, and keep spreading the word on us. That's the best thing. I mean, you can give us all the money in the world, but what really helps is spreading the word and getting our names and our podcast out there and spreading the love. Don't just hog us to yourselves. You know, that's not fair to the
spread
world.
the
The
love.
world needs the Armchair Fantasy Football Podcast.
Okay.
And a vaccine.
Yes.
The vaccine comes second, and we come first. The world needs us, John.
Okay, guys, stay safe, and we'll see you soon.
See you next
Thank you
time.
for listening to the Armchair Fantasy Football Podcast. Thanks for supporting the show. Until next time.